feel like this whole Whipgate thing is a metaphor, Dan, for all the other things. Like, they would rather talk about something that did not happen and try to convince people that the Border Patrol was whipping migrants instead of dealing with the real issue.
Yeah, this is the first whipping incident in human history. No whip and no incident. But you almost have to, right? You have to marvel at the Democrats' ability. Like, they know, it's like that old quote attributed to Solzhenitsyn all the time, even though it wasn't. It says, you know, they know they're lying. We know they know they're lying. They know we know they're lying. And yet they still lie. It's like everybody knows you made this story up, okay? We have the photos, we have the photographer, and they're still doing it. But why are they doing it? That's what matters. Because we have a Department of Homeland Security secretary now. You ever see that meme on the internet? You had one job. You know, like the post office guy throws the in the garbage. It's like, dude, you had one job. The guy's title is Homeland Security Secretary, and yet they ask him on the Weekend Show with Chris Wallace, how many people are in the United States? And he's like, it reminds me of that old, Pete Puma thing from Woody Woodpecker. How many lumps you on? I don't know, 3 or 4. He's like, how many people are in the country? He goes, I don't know, 10,000, 12,000, could be more. Like, that's a big error, right? It's like, imagine like Dana's doing the show with Bill and like, what time do you get out? I don't know, you get out at 9, but maybe 9:10, maybe 9:15. Like, your only job, my man, your only job is to know who's in the homeland. You're the Secretary of Homeland Security. And that's why the whip story is important, because they have totally failed on the border. It's been a catastrophe. They're lying to America. And it was a convenient distraction. And sadly, a bunch of useful idiots ran with it.
Jessica, one of the things about the secretary is that when the whip thing first came up, he defended the Border Patrol agents, okay? Overnight, like maybe from a phone call or something, maybe like the bat signal went out. Like, actually, no, we're going to trash the Border Patrol agents falsely. And by the next day, he said they're very troubled and that this shouldn't happen. By the end of the week, he said it was a sign of systemic racism on something that didn't happen.
Well, and before the investigation had concluded. To me, that was just the easiest way out of this. We're looking into it. If you don't want to say there were reins versus whips and you don't...
Sorry, let me just interrupt. But one of the problems with that is that the President of the United States, the head of the Commander-in-Chief, he said there will be consequences and they will pay.
Correct. It was, there was clearly a lack of communication across the branches there with that. And I understand, and we talked about this on Friday, and I got panned on Twitter for not being as familiar with reins culture as I should be.
But you grew up in Tribeca. We understand.
Yeah.
I taught her everything she needs to know.
Absolutely. But I'm learning so much every day here. But if there had been communication across departments with that, I think that Secretary Mayorkas' response on day one was the correct response, which is, we're going to look into this.
The first time he spoke, he did, as the leader of the people that are being attacked for no reason.
Right. I want to press back a little bit on what Dan was saying about that they're just using this as a distraction. I think that we know that everybody uses an optics scenario when they can to be able to not talk about a thing that maybe you have to, but Chris Wallace pushed him and he did have to talk about it. And that's how we got the 10 to 12,000 Haitians that have already gotten in here. We learned a lot about the COVID protocols. We know that people are being sent back who are testing COVID positive. But this idea of language being such a sticking point. It's something that I never understand. You know, Chris Wallace says there's a flood of migrants, says it wasn't a flood. Who cares? You have 30,000 people under a bridge. You can call it whatever you want. It's too many people who are desperate.
That's like crisis. Remember when they wouldn't say it was a crisis for so long? Katie, the other thing that's interesting, like, well, we might all be thinking this, or maybe not all, but we're thinking this does not look good. The criticism of the Biden administration from the left is also quite strong. And I think we all have to think about that, right? Their concerns are that these migrants never should have been sent back, that this was the wrong thing to do. They don't offer other solutions, and they complain that the Republicans don't offer any solutions. Congress hasn't done anything about it, and I get all that. But I don't think we can lose sight of the criticism of Biden coming from the left as well.
Well, and the left is driving border policy for the Democratic Party. I mean, it's very clear in Mayorkas this weekend when he's asked about, well, what are you doing to prevent this from happening in the future, knowing that we have thousands more people who are in South America coming up now because they know the door is open and that thousands of people are being released into the country, and he doesn't give any solution. And if you go back to the campaign trail, Joe Biden said in August of 2019, we can absorb 2 million people a year in this country. So when we're looking for solutions, when you look at Democrats and they are asked if they would give free health care to illegal immigrants, they are perfectly fine with this. So when the question of, is this going to continue? What is the solution? They don't want any solutions to this problem. And in terms of the Whipgate hoax, it wasn't just a miscommunication between branches about them changing their language. This was very clearly a strategy to scapegoat and accused Border Patrol agents of doing their job to distract away from the fact that there were thousands of people under the bridge. And the big question is, well, who suffers here? Americans suffer. Border towns suffer. Why is there two sets of rules for American citizens? So if you trespass, you get prosecuted for that. But if you trespass into the country, one final point, there's been this talking point from people like Congressman Waters that these are just people seeking asylum from Haiti. They've had it rough. Well, the facts are that they went for asylum in South America and have been living in South America for years after claiming asylum. They are coming here because the door is open, which is,
Absolutely.
and when you claim asylum falsely, that's also a crime that Democrats don't want to acknowledge.
Yeah, the root causes weren't a problem in Chile,
Listen,
as far as I remember.
there's some nuance to this people aren't talking about. So we're not sending anyone back to Haiti right now because of everything going on in Haiti. So Democrats are pointing that out as well. And so the thing that Chris Wallace pushed him on that I thought was the best thing he got out of him was, sir, why did you ever let them across the border to begin with? When you go back and say, oh, but in 2019 this and in 2018 that, the difference was the Remain in Mexico policy, because something that Border Patrol will tell you, people on horses and Texans will tell you, is those migrants don't have any more right to be in Mexico than they do here. So once they are here, we can't just push them back across the border. And that's why it was so important for Border Patrol officers to have the tools they need to stop people from getting across that river and under that bridge to begin with, trying to take advantage of our system. Our own reporters are showing their paperwork that shows that they've been wherever they've been and shows their residency in South American countries. They're ripping them up and throwing them away before they get to the border. So they say, oh, I'm a Haitian migrant and you can't send me back to Haiti because it's a mess right now. And so they're taking advantage of our full system that Democrats have worked really hard to give them that opportunity to do. And it's nothing against those people, but it's everything to do with the people in this country and the people that I know in Dalton, Georgia, that came here from South American countries, some of them illegal, and then their kids became DACA, and some of them are naturalized. And the fact that once you get here and you live in the shadows in this system, you never are a part of the American dream. And that's what's important. Develop an immigration system that lets people become a part of the American dream. Otherwise, it's just a class system. And you're wanting, as Democrats, to invite people into a worse scenario almost, because now you're living in the shadows, 3 or 4 families to a home, sending most of your money back to Mexico for Mexican migrants. It's a mess, and they know it.
I don't think that anyone who is here, quote unquote, living in the shadows, and we know these people living in cities like New York and D.C. My father works in Oregon in farming. There are a lot of people out there who are there illegally. None of them would trade their reality living in the shadows to going back to where they came from. We give people,
But they would
even
much
if it's
rather be
half
a part of what we have
Sure,
going on.
but we can't necessarily grant citizenship to everybody, and we're giving opportunity to people to take jobs that Americans will not do.
How do you know that? Maybe you should offer them to
I think
Maybe
plenty of
you stop
Americans
paying
have
them
been
not to
offered
work.
the jobs
Maybe
to
if we didn't
pick
have so
fruit,
many
But you're
clean
mounting an
houses.
argument for the illegality of immigration right now because it might be morally superior, and that's not how this country works.
Well, they should go through a legal process if they can. That's
I
why
agree.
the vast majority of them pay taxes also into phantom accounts. Just if one day they do get caught, they can say, I've been paying into your system. I respect American laws as best that I can. Yes, maybe I got in here the wrong way, but I want to
But that's
be
not
part
the
of
way
it.
the law works. It's not as best as you can. It's like, it's the law.
It's just
you don't
the
get
law.
to respect it like when you feel. I don't like Obamacare, but unfortunately, I don't get to say the same thing.
Well,
So that's not the way
I
the
would
law
say
works.
that we are off to an amazing start for a Monday.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.